Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about Jupiter ascending? Stick around and find out. I couldn't think of another song. All I could think of was the Star Wars song, and I just decided to do that instead. All right. Hey, I'm Peter Franson from ChristianGeekCentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions, here with an uncut review of Jupiter Ascending, brought to us by writer and director Wachowskis. All right. So this one's about Jupiter Jones, who was born under a night sky with signs predicting that she was destined for great things. Now grown, Jupiter dreams of the stars but wakes up to the cold reality of a job cleaning toilets and an endless run of bad breaks. Only when Kane, a genetically engineered ex-military hunter, arrives on Earth to track her down, does Jupiter begin to glimpse the fate that has been waiting for her all along. Her genetic signature marks her as next in line for an extraordinary inheritance that could alter the balance of the cosmos. All right, so this is the first. Let's see. The Wachowskis gave us the Matrix trilogy, and then also Cloud Atlas. And I don't think other than those two, I can't remember if they wrote Speed Racer or not. I haven't seen that one anyway. But they both wrote and directed this one. This is a story that's about a lot of political maneuvering and infighting among a royal family in space. And if that sounds boring, then don't worry. There's tons of action all over the place. You know, it's really just like action scenes interrupted by a few scenes of a romantic subplot between the two leads and decadent court politics in space. Now, despite the family infighting premise, I felt like there was very little relatable drama in this movie, which is a shame because I'm always game for some good family drama. I think family conflict is a great source of drama, but I think that the characters they were going for in this movie were so kind of high royalty, high court politics that they had that kind of coldness to them that really kind of sucked a lot of the dramatic potential out of those relationships. The romance, actually, I think that the romantic subplot between Jupiter and the genetic hunter assassin guy Kane that comes to help her out is the best part of the story, but I also felt that it was underserved. I think they could have given so much more attention there. You know, this movie, you know, Jupiter discovers that she is poised to inherit, that she's actually a descendant of this royal family, and she's poised to inherit the entire planet Earth, and which is like the most valuable commodity of the known universe. You know, what is on Earth and what can be harvested from Earth, and what that means. Harvested is kind of part of the movie that I won't spoil for you. But anyway, you know, the story kind of taps into that desire, that fantasy that I think so many girls have, that they all want to be treated like a princess. They all want to be treated like a queen. They all want to be courted, you know, by a dashing hero, you know, who calls them your highness, you know, and so I think it tapped into just some of those really core things that a lot of girls and women feel. And I think they could have tapped into that some more. Even I was feeling, you know, my heart was going out to this girl who was finding herself suddenly being treated like royalty when she was used to cleaning toilets every day, you know, and suddenly this guy that's sent to protect her and take care of her is calling her your majesty, and you can see her kind of blushing at that and getting all Twitter-pated, you know, and even as a guy, you know, my heart went out to her, and I felt a little bit of what she was feeling, you know, and I just kind of loved that, you know. It made her endearing to me, and so I wish that they would have played up those elements of the story a whole lot more, downplayed a little bit of the political intrigue, and brought that romance to the forefront a little bit more. And I think we could have had a really unique experience. I mean, how often do you see in a sci-fi action movie the romance be like the main story? That would have been really interesting if like the political stuff would have just been something to get to connect the scenes and get us from point A to B, and have that romance really be the central thing. I would have been totally game for that, but that's not what happened here. Let's see here. There are scattered Earth culture references by aliens, like it's as easier than screwing in a light bulb, or look at her, the Beauty and the Beast, or something like that. So there'll be these little like scattered references of Earth culture, and you just don't get the sense that the aliens that are making these references have been like having their eyes glued to planet Earth and taking in all of our culture and stuff like that, so that it would make sense for them to speak using those kinds of colloquialisms. Is that the right word? And so it just seemed like the writing wasn't as thoughtful for the aliens as maybe it could have been to present them as these removed alien beings. Even though the aliens I'm talking about actually have common ancestry with humans and they look just like humans, Anyway, you can watch the movie if you really want to know what I mean. But, people who've not been living on Earth at all are using phrases by people who live on Earth. So, and it didn't quite make sense to me. I would have liked them to be just a little bit more culturally different. Even like the political intrigue and stuff like that among the royals, it was just like, okay, well, we've seen this on Earth, and they're also quoting, using metaphors from Earth. There's just too much in common there. I would have liked them to have been different. The final result is ultimately a very forgettable story and forgettable characters for me. I think that Jupiter was just on the cusp of being a character that I could really be feeling for much of the movie, but she didn't quite get there because they didn't spend enough time, I don't think, on who she is, her hopes, her personal dreams, her personal desire for a romance that would sweep her off her feet. There were hints there, and they did play with those themes a little bit, but they didn't go near as far as I would have liked them to. Mila Kunis plays Jupiter and does a fine job. She's, I'm trying to think of stuff that I've seen her in before. I think this is maybe the role that the first role I've seen her in where I really liked her and I really found her relatable. I really cared for her. And maybe that's just kind of an accident of casting or scripting or something like that. But I really did think she did fine in this role. And Channing Tatum, usually, he's just kind of like when the kind of roles that I've seen him in is just like this walking kind of like meat man, who's just kind of like a tough, stoic hero and stuff like that. But there were just some nice little subtle moments from him, and it was it was in scenes dealing with that romance where I was like, oh, I was feeling something for him too. So again, nothing world changing in terms of his career and the kind of roles that he's played, but it was nice to see just a few little hints of new things from him that I hadn't seen before. Then of course we got Sean Bean in here from Lord of the Rings and all kinds of sci-fi fantasy type stuff that's usually smaller or direct to video since Lord of the Rings, but always a welcome presence. Really enjoyed him in this. And Eddie Redmayne, who is the guy who, I don't know if the movie's come out yet, but it's the one about, what is his name? He's in a wheelchair and he's a scientist and he talks with the aid of a robotic thing. That guy. Who, if I paused and looked it up, I would be like, yes, Pater, you use that guy's name, in conversation once every 2 months. I don't know why you're forgetting it now. But these are uncut reviews, so I'm not going to do that. So anyway, you know who I'm talking about. But it's that actor, and he's been seen in a few other things since then. And he is creepy and weird and maybe slightly effeminate or at least decadent or something. There's just something about him that I was just like, which is appropriate because he's the villain of this movie. So, my hat goes off to that casting. The stunts and visuals. There's these cool kind of like hover roller skate type things. There's no like wheels on them, so you can't really call them roller skates, but he's got these kind of like these hover boots that function like roller skates. He's like, he's doing these kind of maneuvers that make me think that they maybe shot the movie with him on rollerblades or something like that. It's an interesting kind of just sci-fi technology concept to be visually exploring in a movie. And so I do have to tip my hat to the Wachowskis for trying something like that. And, that was something that I've never quite seen before in a movie, so that was pretty cool. The action and effects in this movie, they're all over the place, and they're representing Hollywood at its current best. But the action was a little too busy at times, and it lacked what I would call dramatic focus. I missed the old Wachowskis' bullet time technique, which at first it was just used mostly to be cool, but at times it was also used to slow down and give dramatic emphasis to what was happening in the scene. A really dramatic moment to slow down, raise the tension up, and get us on the edge of our seats and our eyes glued to the screen. I would have liked a little bit more of that, or maybe they could have simplified some of what was going on in the background of a few shots to draw my focus in to what was really of dramatic import in the action scene. As it was the action scenes were often just kind of like noisy and just kind of like all over the place, just like, okay. So anyway, the Wachowskis as I look at this movie, I think about their history. They once innovated and created a new standard for sci-fi action, with, of course, the Matrix trilogy, and particularly the first Matrix, where they really innovated with special effects. They kind of got lazy, I think, and leaned on CGI for those same types of action sequences in the following two movies in that trilogy, even though I really do enjoy all three of the Matrix movies. I don't poo-poo them like a lot of folks do. But since those movies, we've got Cloud Atlas, and now this movie, they've just kind of disappointed me. They're not innovating in the ways that I would like them to innovate. I think they innovated in terms of some of the themes and storytelling that they did in Cloud Atlas, but I mean, I hated a lot of the philosophy that was presented in Cloud Atlas, so that was a stinker to me. It was illogical and weird, and anyway. So for me, after seeing this movie, Zack Snyder is my go-to guy. I don't think I'm going to have the same kind of anticipation when I hear about a new Wachowski movie coming out. I think Zack Snyder kind of took the ball that they were playing with and ran with it, starting with 300 and onward, with his use of slow motion, and even in Man of Steel, though he didn't use slow motion, he still was doing stuff with the virtual camera, that was really cool and exciting. And I just would have liked a little bit more of that kind of visual action innovation going on from the Wachowskis in this movie, but we didn't get that. So in many ways, it didn't feel like a Wachowski movie. It just didn't feel bold, either thematically or visually. So it was strange. This did not feel like a Wachowski movie in many ways. Speaking of relevance, moral, philosophical issues that this movie might bring to mind or cause to come into conversation during or after watching this movie, this is the most, in my opinion, thematically shallow movie the Wachowskis have put out by far. And that's why I create two different categories for rating, quality and relevance. That's not like a knock on the movie and on the movie's quality or anything like that. I just think it's interesting that they didn't seem as interested in saying anything philosophically in this movie, or at least not bringing that to the forefront near as much as they have in their past movies. There was a brief remark of pursuit of profit over all else, being the highest value among the villains, thereby them saying, if anything, that's bad to pursue profit above all else. Okay, so good. That's not a revolutionary moral concept. They also, I think the movie, the villains say that increasing human lifespan, giving us more time to live, is the highest commodity in the universe now. And that's a logical conclusion if you're coming from a naturalistic viewpoint where there is no life beyond this one, that once our bodies expire, that is the termination of our existence, And there might have even been, I can't remember, there might have been a remark about evolution and them achieving a higher form of evolution or something like that. I might be thinking of the trailer for Chappie before this movie. But anyway, I do think there might have been an evolution kind of comment from one of the bad guys, which is significant because it's not often, at least in the past, and more in the last 5 years, to associate evolution, which is usually thought of in terms of naturalistic Darwinian evolution, strictly speaking. It's getting more and more common to have that associated with villains, that philosophy associated with villains. Anyway, there was one statement that I really grabbed my attention, and that was when Jupiter was kind of wrestling through just kind of like who she was and stuff, and how people were reacting to her and stuff like that. She was just like, I clean toilets every day. I don't understand why people are reacting to me this way. And one character says to her, "It's not what you do, it's who you are." And man, I wish that could have been a theme that was played with a whole bunch, because as humans, it seems like our default position to define our value, our self-worth, based on what we can do, what we can achieve, what we have accomplished, what we're good at, how beautiful we are, the effort we put into making ourselves look good, or the effort we put into whatever, like effort equals worth, or activity equals value, And here we have, in this brief moment in Jupiter Ascending, this moment where a character says to her, "It's not what you do that that people are reacting to you for, and that is the sum of who you are. It's who you are that's really important." So yeah, so that would go against, I suppose, like the Batman Begins philosophy on the value of life. Where he says, who I am inside, it's not who I am inside, but what I do that defines me. That would be more along the philosophical lines of our default thinking, of the default thinking of all religious and philosophical systems outside of Christianity, which says that, we are defined by the fact that we are made in the image of God. We are image bearers of God, and the fact that Jesus, God himself, loved us so much and saw so much value in us that he allowed himself to be tortured and killed so that he could have a relationship with us that would last forever. That's in biblical Christianity what gives us value and what gives us significance, not what we do, which is what you're going to see in I think every other philosophical or religious system I can think of. But those little points that I mentioned, they are brief, they are scattered. Some of them I even wonder, were they intentional? I mean, it's so buried and scattered. There was no there wasn't even one or two major themes that were repeated and recurring through the movie. It was just these little pop, 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 little blips that could easily be ignored or missed. So I don't think this movie's going to lend itself to any worthwhile thought or conversation unless you really, that's what you watch movies to do, is to look for things to think about and talk about along those lines. So in summary, if I were a time traveler and talking to myself, I'd say, Pater, skip this movie. It feels a lot like Guardians of the Galaxy, but with more romance and fewer jokes. So if you like Guardians of the Galaxy, you might like this movie. You might really get a kick out of it. I think fans of Guardians of the Galaxy and fans of maybe particularly the Star Wars prequels, I know it's not popular to like the Star Wars prequels, but I don't think there's anything wrong with enjoying those. This movie doesn't have the cutesy kitty stuff and the Jar Jar stuff that everybody hates, but I'm talking about all the other general aspects and the way those movies feel. Just kind of like this fun sci-fi that's, just not psychologically realistic, and the writing's kind of sloppy, but it's fun, I think that you might get a kick out of this movie. What I would say to myself, though, is, Pater, go down to your DVD collection and pull out Fifth Element again. That one was also bold and brightly colored in its vision of a sci-fi world, but it was much more bold and much more interesting and strange and unusual and alien than this movie was, despite the copious amounts of CGI in this movie compared to Fifth Element. It's rated PG-13 for some violence, sequences of sci-fi action, some suggestive content, and partial nudity. It's just a couple people's butts, pretty briefly. Quality score, I give it a 7.0 out of 10, and relevance, I give it a 5.5 out of 10. All right, well, please do like, share, and subscribe if you liked listening to that and you want to share it and you want more videos like that. And then, I hope you go to ChristianGeekCentral.com. Join me and some other geeks as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.